This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MtG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptar. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MtG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
Hey guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal cast. Me and Reptar here holding it down still. Going to be a pretty quick episode for you. Yep. Excited for this. We do have some filler news, kind of, the product announcements that have been made recently by Mero and Verhey, as well as a statement that was made that was the "and" of MTG Arena. Mm-hmm. We also are going to be covering our Patreon. So that is this episode, and in the interest of keeping it quick and wrapping it up, we're going to be going straight into picks after that. Yep. So let's get going.
Yep. So one of the first things we had this past week was a tweet from Mero, and I didn't realize it was in response to Tolarian Community College. And the professor suggested that people pay attention for the end of February for a modern announcement, to which Mero responded, and we can see it up here, that he's got something big on the horizon, and he would be honestly surprised if people did not love this product. And that kind of leaves the door wide open for what they could be doing. Will it be another, what was it? Not a challenger deck, not an event, a modern event deck. Was the
modern event deck, yeah.
Yep. It could be another one of those. It could be another master set.
Well, yeah, although according to Verhey's article, which again, the left doesn't know what the right is doing, we're going to avoid master sets for a while.
For a hot minute. Yep.
But, they said they'd avoid masterpieces too, so whatever.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just a modern specific supplemental product that's not a master set. That just kind of reinvigorates the format, maybe something akin to Commander or, what have you. But this does open the door for a lot of high equity reprints.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something to pay attention for. We've got 3 weeks left. That probably means it'll be announced at the Pro Tour. They're putting a lot of eggs in the basket of this Pro Tour now.
Yeah. I think that's probably fine. It's going to be the last one, so go out with a bang, I guess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Make it count. As far as what the product could be, I've heard semi-reliably it's going to be something similar to an event deck. Basically the Challenger decks 2.0, but for modern. Although frankly, I think that seems most likely. Mm-hmm. I would love, however, to see it be something that's effectively like, how the Commander sets are legal in Legacy and Vintage. Mm-hmm. I would love to see a modern legal only set, like you mentioned, where it's just, what? Nail in the coffin. We're done with Legacy. We're done with Vintage. Everybody knows it. Nobody's saying it. Wizards just own up to it, release the product, throw it out there. Modern is our flagship now for paper.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, and this is definitely a way to get people into the format, and financially speaking, for people who aren't invested in Modern in the sense that they can play Modern, I think this is at least going to be another decent starting point like the previous event deck was. Not because that event deck was super playable, but because there were a ton of great cards in that deck. You had Inquisition of
Stoneforge.
Stoneforge, Path to Exile, Sword of Feast and Famine, the Black-White Filter Land.
Fetid Heath.
Yeah, that was in there. That deck was insane for people who just wanted staples.
It just had really good value in it, and I thought that was what, so getting something like that out there, it short term, it alleviates some of the financial pressure on a lot of those cards.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Especially if, obviously it can't because it's not unbanned. If it was something like, they had unbanned Stoneforge, mm-hmm. and then they release a product like that contains a Stoneforge. That's the type of thing that, short term, it looks bad for the market, but long term, getting more people in there is only better.
Yes.
So I think it'd be great.
I agree. And I think, for people who are sitting on a ton of modern backstock, this isn't necessarily going to be, even after the announcement, a sky is falling kind of moment. This is just, you're at a crossroads now. You can either try and divest from really niche specs in Modern or really niche holds. Things, for instance, anything that's in the Soul Sisters deck, that's a very niche deck that people play. Like Suria's Ascendant is really only in that deck. Things like that you can probably get out of safely now. and not feel too bad about with something like this on the horizon.
Yeah. And on the topic of, potential masters being that modern product, Verhey's State of Design was kind of interesting. He touched on the failures, and I appreciated the transparency of saying, hey, we know we tried a lot of things out. Yep. We know some of them didn't stick. We're trying. And frankly, I loved that he said the one thing that he messed up more than any other was the reprints on the Commander product.
Set, yeah.
And I think I'm glad that they owned up to it, because the new cards were great, but this was one of the most underwhelming years that I can remember.
Oh, yeah.
For reprints.
I'm scrolling through the article now, and even when I went through it before, I was honestly surprised at the amount of product that we got this year, and there were two in this list that I didn't even remember. The Game Night, which I still don't know what that is, and then the themed packs, which they're going to be doing, I think, but the idea was floated in 2018.
Yeah, so they did a test run at big box retailers and in Japan. And in Japan, they sold like crazy.
Wow, okay.
So,
yeah. And it's a really interesting sub-design to a set where you just have like thematic. It's almost akin to the all-foil Alara packs. Yeah. And I think if they wind up being as good as he purports them to be, then it's a great way to bring people in to open packs for value and be able to play instead of just cracking a box at random. And maybe that's what happens to LGS in time, is they get this product, they ratchet down box sales through LGS, ratchet up specialty packs like this, and it kind of keeps players happy because you can have a higher dollar MSRP on these products than you would a regular pack, and those players are going to feel better about opening those. 24 or 36, whatever the price works out to be then.
They're somewhat seeded, but at least you have a little bit of an idea of what you're getting. I think that's a good way to break a lot of that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the one thing I do want to touch on here out of this article is, while we were tweaking Ultimate Masters, we decided we're putting the Masters program on hiatus. Mm-hmm. All right, we heard that with Masters 25. We heard this was going to be the last Masters set for a while. Then Ultimate Masters came out. We heard that Masterpieces weren't happening. And then we got a Mythic Edition.
Yep.
And then we got another Mythic Edition. So I wouldn't necessarily put too much stock in that statement. Especially, later he touches on and jokes, people thought Battlebond was Commander Masters.
Yeah.
Because it had a lot of, money reprints. Again, it's just like the Mythic Editions. They can call it what they want. It's the same product. Mm-hmm. You can call it a Mythic Edition, but you are effectively releasing masterpieces out there. You might change the distribution method, which is fine. But that's something that you need to own up to. It's the same product.
I forgot how many products we had this year, like I mentioned. And when I went through this, one of the other thoughts I had was surrounding wallet fatigue.
Yeah.
And last year and the year before were huge because we had those big reprint sets. We had 1.5 Masters a year or something like that on average over the last 2 years. And this year probably saw as many or more supplementals, all things considered, even announcements for future ones.
Yeah.
And it just didn't feel the same. And the year didn't feel like it was bogged down with announcements of sets that people had to buy into if they wanted to play certain formats or they wanted to have access to reprints. But in the same token, the quality of those reprints was also not as high as the last 2 years, even with Ultimate Masters coming out. The box toppers aside, of course, those are hard to count, right? And the Mythic Edition, I would count kind of halvesies for this because you knew what you were getting. You were guaranteed to get all the Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Unlike the box toppers in UMA.
True.
So it was this weird spot. It was almost like you consider it the HasCon promo kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you want to. It's a product that people will buy if they're interested in it, but not everybody cares.
Yeah. Other than that, you just get it to piece it out. And speaking on reprints, there's actually a Reddit thread that I thought was really interesting that popped up today. actually, or yesterday, right before this announcement. And it was basically someone just saying one of the biggest mistakes was there were no good reprints. There was nothing that was needed to happen. And we actually kind of touched on this in an earlier episode where we talked about the reprint equity of cards like Oracle of Moldiah and Bloom Tender.
Yes.
And there's a list of the most upvoted cards that people wanted to see reprinted. 2 of those cards are Bloom Tender
and Oracle
of Moldiah. And then there's stuff like Cabal Coffers, which Plane Chase, or not Plane Chase.
Torment.
Yeah. The Plane Chase just got bought out and went up on MTG stocks. And then there's stuff like Mystic Remora, which I thought was interesting until I realized Mystic Remora still says target player rather than all players, so it does not have a printing with modern wording. And
Correct.
I don't see them doing anything with cumulative upkeep in a supplemental set. That mechanic is...
Not unless they wanted to do Cold Snap 2, Electric Boogaloo.
We saw how that worked, though.
I did not play during Cold Snap Standard, but I tested during Cold Snap Standard.
No good. It was rough.
I mean, that's the first time I played Trigon Predator. I felt pretty good about my position in the game, but
that's fair. Yeah,
like that's not like my experience with Cold Snap. It was not a good time for me in Magic. No, it's a good thread, and it's definitely something a thread that's worth reading because there are some cards on here that people were talking about, cards that have seen reprints like Cyclonic Rift, which could be a perennial reprint if we want to. There's no reason for that card to be, what is it, over $7 after a Commander reprint?
Yeah.
Like, they're giving up a lot of equity by not reprinting things that could just be printed into the ground. There's no reason why Cyclonic Rift has to actually hold a price tag. Same with Chromatic Lantern. Neither of those cards need to have an actual price tag. Those are for people like us who just want to dunk on EDH players. It's like, cool.
Yeah.
I've got 15 Chromatic Lanterns. Do you want English? Do you want Japanese?
Yeah. What do you want? I've got it.
Yeah.
Let's trade.
Yep.
And that's, it's interesting because most of the reprints that they want, it's stuff like Cabal Coffers, Bloom Tender, Oracle, Command Beacon, Lightning Greaves, which is still $5 to stop being reprinted like 5,000 times
Skull
or whatever
Clamp
it is.
holds value because of EDH, and that card's banned in every other format except maybe Vintage. Like, you can Cobalt Clamp people out.
Yeah. Like, it's there's so many cards, and we always talk about how casuals drive the market because your casual EDH crowd, like your casual type X crowd, whatever, your kitchen table players, they drive so much of that secondary market because they find a card and they're like, hey, I have 36 EDH decks. You know what every single one of them needs? Soul Ring.
Yes.
Lightning Greaves. All of these cards need to be in here.
Yeah.
And I would really like, and we'll have the link to this thread in the description on YouTube. Definitely check it out. There's a lot of good mentions here, and frankly, it's a lot of stuff that the reprint is inevitable. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is the year we get it, now that Gavin has basically said, hey, look, keep an eye out for reprints. There's going to be a lot of those.
Yeah.
Because I messed it up last time. So I think that's really good. And for the health of the game, I think it's really bad for the high financial value, the high equity that some of these cards have. It's, Oracle, granted, does see play in formats besides EDH.
Yeah, it'll pop up here and there.
Bloom Tender doesn't.
Nope.
Command Beacon is obviously just EDH. I guess technically you can play it in Legacy. I've seen some lands playing a command tower for no reason.
It's like Phyrexian Tower. It's most likely an EDH card, but it is definitely in older versions of Nick Fit. Like, stalwarts of that deck will play a Phyrexian Tower when they feel it is necessary. It goes in the box, so to speak.
Yeah.
The 3 visits.
Why? That one makes no sense to me whatsoever.
No. But like Scroll Rack and Vidalcan Orrery are next to each other, and those are definitely cards that need, like, Vidalcan Orrery is great. It was in Battle Bond. It tanked all the way down to sub $5, and now it's all the way back up towards 10 for both printings, regular, rare, and Battle Bond. There's no reason, again, that card can't be printed in perpetuity in Commander sets. Maybe every couple of years when they do an artifact themed deck, you just throw Vidalcan Orrery in there, just whatever.
Oh,
but
actually, orrery is back up to almost 20 now.
There, boom.
Yeah, that's fine. Print it into the ground.
Yeah, there's no reason.
Yeah.
But
and
yeah,
then
those two reads couple really nicely. And
yeah,
we will get those links out in the YouTube description, and if I could fit them in the podcast description, they'll go there as well.
yep.
And the last article that we want to talk about, kind of the biggest one with the most nuggets of wisdom, is Aaron Forsyth's article, The And of MTG Arena. And it's a big article, and it's really interesting. And one of the sticking points that I had was very early on in the article, and I'm looking for it.
I've got it up right now. It's when Forsyth is talking under the heading "What and means."
Yep.
You'll get to keep playing Modern, Legacy, and Commander. You'll get to keep playing best of 3 with sideboards. What's missing from that?
It's standard.
Exactly.
Like I when I read that, I was like, "There's no way that this is not going to be the announcement that precedes the announcement that standard is now going to be our arena format, or arena will be the host for our standard events moving forward." There's no way this article is not the
I don't
the
think
avatar of that.
To me, the big thing especially is the Mythic Championships, some are going to be paper, some are going to be digital. And like I touched on last week when I said, you've got 2 distinctly different ways to play the game. And if you don't play it the way that the championship you qualify for is, you're at an extreme disadvantage. Because if the championships on Arena are still, no sideboard, nothing like that, okay, then queuing through paper doesn't matter, because it's a completely different game at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
So the easiest way to divide that to me is, okay, so we're going to have our Mythic Fests, Magic Fests, whatever, and our Mythic Championships in paper that are going to be Modern, Legacy, Pauper, whatever.
Whatever, yep.
And the digital ones get to be Arena, Standard. And to me, that makes the most sense. It's the easiest, most clean, concise way to do it.
Yeah.
Is to divide, that's the line. If you want to play paper, you're over here, you're playing Modern. If you want to play Standard, you're over here, you're playing Arena. And that's a clean, concise, exact line along which you can divide it.
Right. And it makes sense, especially from a financial aspect, because WotC is the only place you can go to accrue currency to continue playing Arena and buy your cards. So they make 100% of the profit on this product. There's no secondary market to deal with when it comes to Standard anymore, unless you need to buy paper cards for older formats. So abandoning paper sets is not something that's going to happen. It's just large paper tournaments are probably going to go away. In time, Standard will probably be relegated to just an option in Whir for a Friday night.
Yeah.
Or, maybe you can still run PTQs if you want, whatever system that's going to be when we find out. But this article, based on what we see up at the top, and then under the subheading of best of 3 but sideboard free, basically goes on to paint an elaborate picture of what Standard is going to look like moving forward.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read the article, this is something that's actually very akin to early 90s CCGs, starting with the Star Wars CCG, where you showed up with a dark side of the Force and a light side of the Force deck.
Yep.
And in every round, you played each one of those decks, light against dark, and then you flipped roles. That's basically the way this is going to happen. I believe that was not the case with the Versus series, but it is. It was with a handful of other small games, and Hearthstone uses this model for their tournaments.
Yeah.
So when you show up to a Hearthstone event, they tell you how many decks you need to bring in at a minimum.
Yep.
And then when you sit down for your rounds, you basically share your deck name and I believe your hero choice with your opponent, and your opponent gets to ban out one of those decks that you play in your round, and it's a best of 3 or 5 or whatever they want. And this is going to work the same way on Arena. The TLDR is that you could play the same deck twice on Arena, which is different from both of those other games, but you have to basically have them as separate files, so you could quote unquote present both decks at the same time.
Yeah.
You could switch between rounds, whatever you want. There's no limitation on the number of cards that you can have between the decks, so you can have 4 of one card in one deck and 4 of the same card in another deck. But it just paints this landscape of a standard format moving forward that's digital only. It's much more accessible and just makes it easier for people to kind of pick up and travel and play this game, because all you need is a laptop. You don't need to worry about your computer, or maybe you don't even need your cards. Maybe you don't even need your computer anymore. You just go to PAX East and play at the Magic Fest there, or Mythic Championship, or whatever they're putting up.
It's funny you mentioned the similarity to Hearthstone, because today actually Wizards announced that they have hired Bren Drago to be the senior manager of competitive gaming, who previously ran the WoW TCG organized play, which, by the way, was insane. And he oversaw the Hearthstone Championships for quite some time, which, granted the similarities between the two, it seems like an easy transition if we do go to this like best of one, or the invitational format. Like, it seems to make more sense for someone like him to come in.
Yeah. If you want an idea of where Magic as an esport can head in regards to Mythic Championships, the Fireside challenges from past BlizzCons should be available on YouTube, and you can go look at the pomp and circumstance that those guys use for that event, because everything at BlizzCon they just blow the doors off of, and that guy sat over events similar to that when the Mythic Championships, or not, with the Hearthstone champs.
Yeah.
Like, they brought people in from all over the world to play that game on site. Like, he's no stranger to running a great event.
Yeah, and that's honestly one of the things about which I am most excited. Is they might actually have someone who knows what they're doing for once.
Yeah, behind the...
Which, I mean, it sounds terrible, but really, like, that's pretty good, right? I mean,
yeah,
I think that's good for them. It's about time.
I mean, they changed off of the ELO system, which was a holdover from chess, but the tournament scene has basically been the same the entire time. 25 years of the same tournament structure, and maybe you want to update it as other games update their systems and are successful.
Yeah.
And it just pushes Magic a little further along and aligns it with what people are doing in other games, what the player is like. It is a hard shift. We're not pulling a handbrake 180 here. It's more of a hard left-hand turn, because you're basically creating, like you said, this hard divide and kind of a sub-game of Magic now.
Yeah.
Like, standard is best of one, or even draft of best of one is still Magic. It's just not the same kind of Magic.
Yeah, it's not the Magic we're used to.
No.
Which, I mean, again, to me, this doesn't change anything as far as the, like, everyone, 4 or 5 years is what we're looking at. But I'm somewhat more excited for the 4 or 5 years, because I don't think it's going to be just awful. And that's the big difference for me. So I'm looking forward to see what happens for once.
Yeah.
Cautiously optimistic would be the way I'd put it, probably.
Yeah, all of these announcements kind of roll up into an interesting place for Magic in 2019 and 2020. While the tournament scene might be dying down in regards to paper Magic, moving more towards the digital space, that does kill the ability to shuffle around cards in Standard for a profit, which to some people is their bread and butter. You can buy low, sell high in Standard, but you've got to be quick on that turnaround.
Yeah.
And, that's fine, because that's not what WotC wants for Standard. Over the years, WotC has done a number of things to make Standard easy, more accessible, less costly. And they've done everything from creating a new rarity, and the game survived that, to adding the not dual decks, but the Planeswalker decks and the not the precursor of the Challenger decks, where they infused high-end cards into the ecosystem at a fraction of the cost. Like when Fetchlands were in Standard, Windswept Heath was in one of the decks, Collected Company was in a deck.
Yep.
We had Galta, a premier rare, when Mono Green Stompy was a deck, still in the Spell Slingers. And this just makes the game more accessible, and by doing that, you're also raising stock on the other formats. Players come in, they're introduced to Standard. Where draft lies, we don't know, but that's not a value proposition, really. That doesn't drive prices. People want to play a more intricate version of the game. They're going to roll down into other formats, and that allows you to move in on Modern as somebody who's doing this financially, but you've got to be very careful about what you're picking up. And so divesting on some of the niche stuff now, like I said earlier, is probably a good move, but what you move in on is very difficult to figure out. But there's probably a lot of money to be made on the Modern landscape in the wake of a lot of these announcements.
Yeah. And, on the note of making money on older formats, something that I've noticed recently just tracking myself, one of the things that a lot of players are doing, and this is kind of where old school came from, was you had all these people that grew up playing the game back in 93, 94, 95, that decided, hey, we want to revitalize this because the Eternal formats are becoming increasingly grassroots.
Yeah. Because
WotC clearly doesn't care. But when you have enough players that care about things, this happens.
Yeah.
And a lot of the middle school and pre-modern foils have started spiking. Like last night, I checked Phyrexian Negator pack foils, and they were like $100. Old Border Obstinate Balos from Onslaught foils are like $10, $15.
I checked last night. There are as of last night, there were 2 LP Exalted Angels from Onslaught left on TCG Player. There's no near mints. And
and the Painlands from Apocalypse are like $80 in some places.
Forget
now.
the 7th edition foils. You'll never own those.
Yeah. They were already $100.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not happening now.
Maybe this will raise the price on the Ice Age ones.
They've gotten to like $7 to $8 for a lot of them.
Boom.
Yeah, it's been, that's kind of, I feel like the next thing is paying attention to these like grassroots community formats like Pauper. I mean, Pauper was basically a grassroots moto movement that all of a sudden you've got Spire Golem non-foils for like $2. Okay. But that's something to keep an eye out for, I feel like. And on, the note of stuff to watch out for, I guess we'll get into the picks. So.
Oh, no, we got another Patreon.
Oh, no, we do. You're right. The Patreon. The most important thing of all. How could I forget? So we have on our Patreon, and it is MTG Cabalcast. It's real easy to find on Patreon. We've got 3 tiers. So we have the Cabal Acolyte, the Cabal Disciple, and the Cabal Paladin. So we wanted to keep it pretty affordable and pretty basic to start out with. So the 3 tiers are $1, $3, and $5 per month. Couldn't be easier. You get access to the Cabal Discord for $1, or the podcast Discord, I should say, for $1 a month. For $3, you get access to the AMA portion of the show, where you can just, I think it was episode 3 or 4, we did a rapid fire from Twitter.
Yes.
That were just questions people had, and we were just off the cuff, boom, let's go.
Yep.
Didn't have any time to formulate, we just went off the cuff. So that'll get you access to that, as well as access to our guest speakers. So like the graded card series we had, you would be able to ask questions or pose questions that we could ask whatever guest speaker we have. And that's for the $3 one. And that, of course, it does include, hey, this is who our guest is going to be. This is what we're going to be talking about.
Yep.
Now, for $5 a month, you get Discord access, your AMA access, as well as the show notes and picks ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
So the Friday prior to recording, we'll provide the show notes and the picks for the week. Now, what that means is when you get the show notes, you can see the show notes, and if there's questions you want us to answer, submit them in the AMA in regards to the show notes, and we'll get them taken care of for you.
Oh yeah.
So pretty easy, accessible. Hope everyone likes it.
And this is just the start. We've got a couple higher tiers we were talking about, maybe some one-time buy-ins for some other odds and ends. And we're going to figure out what we want to do there. We've definitely tossed around the idea of some big giveaways and goals that we want to meet for this, because we want to create a thriving community of people who just want to play this game and have an easier time doing so. Or maybe people who want to step into finance, but they want to make sure that the resources they're using are the best, or they have access to all of them. They found everything they can. This is what we're here for. We aren't guys that make a living off of this. This is what we do for fun, and we're more than happy. And we want to help people. We want to teach people. We want other people to be able to do this and enjoy the game that they're playing, instead of struggle or not be able to play it on occasion.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things we said setting out to this was the more people are involved, the better it is for everyone. Rising tides get all the ships up.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of stigma out there about MTG Finance and MTG financiers that's really negative.
Oh yeah.
Look at the middle school announcement. I think it was MTG Finance speculators, please kindly copulate with yourself, since this is going to be accessible, whatever. Yeah. So that's not
that's not us. We do things like try and make Saldevi excavations show up on the front page of MTG stocks. We are a classy level of people here.
Yeah.
These are the games we play.
Yes. So onward to picks then. So
I want to take this one first, because it's technically late, but it's still ahead of the curve. I wanted to take Thief of Sanity over the weekend, basically before Star City Games. I was hoping we would get this before the top 8 happened.
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
Travel delays. Yeah.
And Monday night I was indisposed. So while I'm not ahead of this pick as early as I would have liked to been, it's cresting towards a $3 card. There's still room to grow between, I'd say, 5 and 8, depending on how prevalent this card is in sideboards of Esper control, or if it begins moving main deck in blue-black X decks.
Yeah.
The utility of this card isn't just born out of the fact that it is a great way to deal with your opponent's Hydroid Craci. Haas's Taker is a little bit better, because you can just steal it once it's on board and cast it yourself again if you want to. This just does a whole lot more. The entire weekend, whenever anybody showed up on stream for Star City, if you go back and watch, and when the commentators talk to people, if you connected with a Thief of Sanity in that event, you basically won that game. This card is just going to steal games. What's the quote from Brian Kibler? I win games I shouldn't. That's Thief of Sanity right now.
Yeah.
Is it? And at a card that's under $3 on TCG Player, it is, as of checking last night, over $6 already on large vendor sites.
Yep.
You can look at probably a move of $4.50 or $5 on Facebook when people start looking for this thing. I think it's a great time to jump in. But this is going to be a short-term hold. This is not going to be long-term, not going to be a mid-term hold. If you think this might have some game after War of the Spark and into the fall, you can certainly sit on this card, but this is something I would buy into and try and be out of in the next couple of weeks as Standard really kind of solidifies through the SCG circuit. Yeah,
and that's the interesting thing, I think, is that a lot of times, for years the way it worked was you had Pro Tour meta the weekend after the set release, whatever. Then you waited a couple weeks and you had the Grand Prix. And the Grand Prix was a solved meta. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time I can remember us just not having that. We'll have had this Standard for a month before we even get a Pro Tour.
Yep.
And we're not going to have coverage of the next Mythic Fest that's Standard. So
and this was by design for WotC, because they decided to take UMA and split up the UMA Grand Prix around the new year. So we came into this new year with a 2019 Grand Prix that was limited for a non-standard set, moving into several weeks of limited for the standard set.
Yeah.
So they did this to themselves.
Yeah, or us, I guess, really, since they supposedly don't care. So mine is going to be kind of touching on something I mentioned earlier and something I've touched on in previous weeks. The F&M Lightning Greaves, actually. So I'm at about 30 or so of these myself.
Okay.
One, it's a promo series that doesn't exist, might not ever exist again. Who knows what's going on with that? Frankly, the art's better. It's just better.
Yeah, it's a strict upgrade.
Yeah, even I like it more than the Masterpiece. It's certainly better than the Mirrored In. Your opinion, whatever, may or may not be better than the Masterpiece. But it's the type of thing that prior to the box topper, the Eternal Witness F&M promo was $50. $50. Lightning Greaves sees just as much, if not more, EDH play than Eternal Witness. And Eternal Witness only saw fringe one-of play in Modern. So, I mean, to me, the value and potential for this to hit $30 to $40, I mean, it's never going to be printed, I wouldn't think, in another set that will have foils. It's, fairly reprint proof for the non-foil. They're all around $5, and it's been printed in 1 million EDH precons. So the value's obviously there for the non-foils to sit at $5. And you've got this F&M foil sitting in between $15 to $20. So for me, it feels like a 6-ish month hold on this one, so a bit more midterm.
Okay.
And I don't think there's any chance you can't get out of it in 6 months for less than $20 to $25 at the bare minimum. Looking right now, there's only 16 listed on TCG Player, and half of those are MP. HP? No, sorry, 3 of them. My apologies. Not nearly half, sorry.
Okay.
I just think it's a really good buy.
It is. It's weird. Like, playable F&M promos generally don't have a large delta in terms of price. They're always just pricey. And I don't want to cite Brainstorm and Duress cards like that.
Yeah.
But you have Kitchen Finks, right? Which was an F&M promo.
Yeah, it was like $15, $20 for the longest time, even when it wasn't seeing play in Modern. I mean, Card Kingdom even has them for $20 now.
Yeah.
So the price is there, it's ripe, and if you look at cards like Wall of Blossoms, which for the longest time was $10 or $5, it's now $10 to $15. So, Impulse, the F&M promo was $10, and now it's $50 or something ridiculous. So
yeah, it's like people forget about these cards, but when they remember, they're just gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically how I see.
No, I like it.
Lightning Greaves F&M.
Yeah, I just got my copy a couple of weeks ago, actually. So I wanted one for a while, and I just never pulled the trigger on it. And then it came across at a pre-release, so I was like, all right, whatever, I'll pick that up.
Yeah, guess I'm going to, sure.
Yeah. But that is it for this week, guys. Thanks for sticking around and listening to us babble on about our announcements. That's what we do.
Appreciate it. Check out the Patreon to be sure. You can find it in the YouTube, podcast, all those descriptions, of course. You can find me at Thirsty Sizzler on the Instagram.
I am at Halt I Am Reptar on Twitter. We can be reached at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter as well. And remember, wherever you're listening to this, give us a rating if possible, and if not, a thumbs up and a subscribe.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.